Joining me now is Ruth Ben-Ghiat, NYU professor of history and author of Strong Men, From Mussolini to the President, and Joyce Vance, former United States attorney and MSNBC contributor. Joyce, we've talked, you expert lawyers and we hosts have talked since Tuesday about the novel nature of John Sauer's claims at the Third Circuit Court and how they sort of mix the political and the legal. But let's take this one about looking over one's shoulder. Donald Trump is making the argument, or his lawyers making the argument, that there'll be a floodgate of things that will happen to presidents based on all the decisions they make while in office if you do not hold the president immune. We're talking about criminal behavior. At least that's what we should be. Presidents, I don't know that there's anything wrong with the idea that a president might look over their shoulder if they're going to commit a crime. We'd kind of like them not to commit crimes, too.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And the remarkable thing about Sauer's argument was he had a far more modest sort of tact he could have taken. He could have conceded that some of Judge Florence Pan's hypotheticals were beyond the scope of the presidency. No president should ever order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival. That's beyond the outer periphery of a president's duties, so no immunity. But that wasn't the approach Trump's lawyers took. They took this expansive approach, asking the federal judiciary to embrace the notion that nothing a president could do could be criminal. And that, I think, is the real problem here, right? As you say, we want presidents to look over their shoulder at the margins. We want there to be incentives in place for them not to commit crimes. What Trump's lawyers advocated for was a crime-free environment where a president is truly above the law.
And Ruth, that then puts this squarely into your bucket of expertise, that once you have always said that sometimes these authoritarian regimes don't start with the toppling of a government or a revolution, but sometimes they happen like this, little decisions here and there that cause the person in charge to accumulate more power and have it proven to them that they can use that power.
Yeah, and I would say, given that we heard the audio clip, the fact that Trump's lawyer was referring to killing a political opponent as simply a controversial decision tells you a lot about the total lack of morals, or rather the authoritarian version of morals that we're working with here. And I remind everybody that authoritarianism is a political system where the executive branch, the leader, arranges government so that not only his past problems, of which Trump has many, his legal problems will go away forever, but that he will be able to do whatever he wants without paying any consequences. So the fact there also, it's always worse than you think it's going to be. That's the other rule of authoritarianism. People don't imagine what can be done, and they're always surprised around the world for a century that it's so bad.
Ruth, one of the things that Trump, he sort of wanted to, it seemed that there were two moments in court where he reacted. One is this idea that the presidents will look over their shoulders. And the other one is the idea that this will open this up to political persecution and prosecution. Donald Trump wants to live in a world where this is a motivated prosecution because it's January. He's the front runner for the Republican nomination. So it falls into this world of you can't prosecute me as president. You can't prosecute me after I'm president. You now can't prosecute me because I'm running for president. And when he runs for president again, you won't be able to prosecute him. It's a weird thing. It's not just the presidential immunity. It's everything to do with Donald Trump immunity.
Yes, it's a personalization. This is what authoritarians do. They personalize governance. So, in fact, his whole victimhood thing, where he's setting up for his followers that he may have to take extreme action and even, assassinate a political rival because he and they will need to be protected. So the victimhood, I am persecuted, works to give a rationale for why they need immunity. And it's been like this ever since Mussolini. I'll remind people the first dictatorship was set up because Mussolini had been, he was fingered for being part of a political assassination, and he needed to make his problems go away because he was going to be prosecuted. And so he declared dictatorship in 1925.
Joyce, for a long time, we've all depended on the idea that the law works. The institutions largely work. Donald Trump may have tried to subvert some of them, but generally speaking, other than the policy decisions, things like the fall of Roe v. Wade, the institutions held. Now that we understand this way of thinking, I understand Donald Trump's kind of trying to get out of a political prosecution, but if this really does fall his way, are you concerned that there'll be a greater motivation to actually subvert the law?
So first, I'll say I'm not concerned about the outcome of this immunity argument. You know, as we've discussed, the immunity defense that Trump has put up would cause this case and possibly others of the criminal prosecutions against him to be completely dismissed. But I think for some of the reasons that you've touched on, this is not an argument that's going to be appealing to the Court of Appeals. I don't think it'll be appealing to the Supreme Court. They've made some decisions on matters, and I'll just say of policy, like abortion or other issues involving the way the executive branch works, that seem to be out of bounds according to scholars who look at legal precedent. But when it's come to core democracy issues, the courts have been much more protective of the Constitution and the law, like they were following the 2020 election, and as they've been in some of the earlier rulings involving Trump and whether he has to follow the law like anyone else would have to. So I think we don't want to be alarmist on that front, but as Ruth says, things are always worse than you think they're going to be once a dictator gets hold. And we know from some of the early comments Trump has made and some of his planning that he would plan to completely corrupt the law, to disrupt the Justice Department, to turn it into a political arm of the presidency rather than a quasi-independent body that looks at criminal cases and engages in prosecutions based on the facts and the law. So there is significant reason for alarm whether he succeeds with this motion to dismiss the criminal case based on presidential immunity or not.
I always wonder, Ruth, how much of this is legal, because what we saw was a legal argument the other day, and how much of this is just Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump's been telling his supporters that he hasn't been able to campaign because he had to be in court. He's had no obligation to be in court. When he was there on Tuesday, it was of his own volition. He had no role there. But in Iowa, a number of particularly evangelicals who are talked to about this, with whom we've spoken, and the New York Times has written about, and Tim Alberta has written an entire book about, they are believing this line about, I'm being prosecuted for you. You and I talked about this when he first started saying these things, and I thought, well, why would anybody believe that? Because nobody else is being prosecuted. But it's working. They've made the connection to Jesus Christ dying for their sins and Donald Trump being prosecuted for them, and it's working.
Yeah, I have a line in my book, Strong Men. They believe him because they believe in him. And that's the importance of the cult of personality, the leader cult in all this. Once people bond to the leader and believe that he has a moral, reason to be in power, and then religious institutions enable him by saying, oh, yes, he was placed there by the will of God. So there's a moral rationale. There's also emotional bonding. They want to protect him because he's a victim. And all of this has been very powerful in history, and it's repeating in America today to conjure up the scenario we're witnessing now.
It is. It's remarkable to witness it, but we are in it at the moment. Thanks to both of you for your analysis this morning.